how is quality perceived and how is safety perceived? I don't need to see pipelines, engines, open crankshafts. That comes much later, right? I need to talk to people to understand how the safety culture is on board, looking at how India has progressed. And I would then be party to the growth story of what the Maritime India vision and the Amrit Kal vision has in mind.
When we speak of maritime nation, it's Singapore comes to our mind, at least in our part of the world.
In those days, there was no internet, there was no chat GPT, just Google and find out how, hey Siri, how do you do cold layup or boiler? You have an answer.
My guest today has sat across surveyors, walked the corridors of classification society, and also been responsible for safety of some of the world's largest heavy lift vessels. He is credited with building IMEI's first ever international chapter in Singapore. He is now the president of the Institute of Marine Engineers India. This is Kaushik Kumar Seal, and welcome to the Maritime One podcast. Good morning, Kaushik Sir. It's an honor and privilege to have you here.
Good morning, Shankar. And it's truly a privilege and an honor for me too to be part of this wonderful initiative which you have undertaken. And I'm glad to be sharing a few thoughts of mine. Thank you for having me.
Let's go back. Let's turn the clocks back. So, your father was a bureaucrat with the central government, and now you are in also regulatory setup as the president of IMEI India. So, what was one piece of advice that he gave you? Maybe you ignored it and later realized he was right.
Right. Wow. That's a huge question. Let me try and put my thoughts and see that. Yeah, my father was from very humble origins in Kolkata. He worked very hard on his way up. He was on a scholarship to the US where he did doctorate in mathematical statistics from Princeton. And then, of course, he came back to India and worked with the government. And then finally, of course, retired in Delhi. So when I joined the Merchant Navy, when I joined the training for that at the Marine College in Kolkata, so he gave me one advice which has actually stayed with me all these years. So what he said was, I mean, if you turn a blind eye towards inefficiency and corruption, it is also seen as you taking part in that. I have stuck to those like principles of not follow something arbitrarily just because it has been happening. You know, I would like to question that. And if that is something which is not adding value to my life, whom I can influence, right? Or who I get influenced by. So that courtier or circle, I'd like to really keep as sanitized and have it corruption free. So that's one advice which I have maintained throughout my 40 years of work life. And I continue to do so. And as a result, I get very good sleep at night, Shankar, just to let you know.
Okay. On that profound note, you spent a significant time at Lloyd's, and what was the most ridiculous reason a ship actually failed an inspection that had absolutely nothing to do with safety?
A very good question, Shankar. Yeah, and one of my favorite questions because it's not about safety or the integrity of the vessel. I mean, the seaworthiness alone. I mean, of course, that's the cornerstone of why classification society exists. But any inspection for that matter, or any survey for that matter, or any audit for that matter, whenever somebody comes to check something, the person who is being checked, the person who's getting inspected, or the systems that is getting inspected, they are always on a defensive mode. And if something is not working or if something is not right, our first off tendency as human nature is to hide that. Because, I mean, the ship is not ours, right? I mean, we must fundamentally understand that. I mean, we are not ship owners when we are sailing. In my numerous surveys and inspections, although the scope of inspection wanted me to see 100% of everything, I have to be brutally honest. I never did that because I used to see, number one, the systems, how somebody is checking something, how somebody is rejecting something. I would go and see that. I would see how the top management has perceived quality control in that organization or on that ship. How is quality perceived and how is safety perceived, right? So uh, I don't need to see pipelines, engines, open crankshafts. That comes much later, right? I need to talk to people to understand how the safety culture is on board. I need to see some records. And believe me, with my experience, I could know if somebody is fudging something or not, right? It's the personal interaction on what is your attitude and behavior in front of a person and how you speak to him. I mean, if you're also saying that something is not working, there is a method of putting that across. Now, if you have a junk ship and you're trying to portray that that's an unsinkable ship like the Titanic, then you know the results.
Any anecdote that comes to your mind, which maybe you got irritated back then, but now you look back and it with a more humorous lens?
Uh, well, yeah, let me see. One, when I was a chief engineer, when a surveyor came on board, the surveyor was very adamant that he enters the steam drum of the boiler, which, in our opinion, was not cooled properly, right? Although we gave it adequate, I mean, our intentions were very clear that we were in port for a very short while, and the boiler was due for survey, and it was a special survey, I think. And our intent was to show, but it was hot. So I told the surveyor very nicely, very politely, that although the boiler is there for inspection and it's opened up, we have ventilated it for 6, 7 hours. So I would suggest that either we wait for a while if it's possible, or maybe just entering half a meter and have a look. So initial reaction obviously was that, we are trying to evade and there's something wrong. It's up to you. I've presented it. So no, no, no. I insist that I would like to go. He looked at the entry of that manhole. It seemed pretty okay because the mouth and the entry area had cooled down sufficiently. So he thought that we were not saying the right thing. So sure enough, he went in, and it wasn't a pleasant experience for him when he came out. So,
That's so delicately put.
and we had to treat him. He got burnt pretty badly. That was the end of the survey. Of course, he had a few other things to see, which he said, okay, I'm crediting all this right to you. Never mind. So that was one very interesting learning that not everyone is trying to fool you. You must uh, tend to believe by having a look around. So then the other anecdote is when I was on board a vessel as a
I was about
surveyor.
to ask you that.
The chief engineer wanted to sign off, and a few things were supposed to be opened up for survey.
Inspection. Hmm.
Yeah, Shankar, I must tell you the difference between a survey and an inspection and an audit at this point. Remind me as one of the
Okay.
questions. So this is a learning which we must give to a lot of people. Yeah, so this was a survey. I had gone for a survey on board, and they were supposed to open up few stuff to show me something major from the main engine, but nothing was open. And the chief engineer was very upset that his reliever did not come in the same boat which I came in.
Oh,
So
so he
yeah,
was sad to just see you alone
so
there.
correct. So he actually thought when he saw the boat arrive, he thought that his reliever was coming in, and I was actually very suitably qualified to take over from him as well. That was that was not the issue at all. Yeah, but he thought I was the chief, but he was very upset. He said, "Okay, I don't think so. It's a good idea to go down to the engine room." I said, "Why? Is there some issue, some fire, some flooding or something?"
Mhm.
He says, "No, no. I'm actually ready to leave." And I was thinking that chief engineer is coming. I said, "I've come here by the morning launch. Allow me at least to stay till the afternoon one, and I'm sure you have made lunch." Master felt very embarrassed. So he said, "You can stay for howsoever long you want." Chief engineer is a bit upset, as you see. I don't think he's ready with the survey because nothing is opened up. So I said, "Okay, I'll try and help to the extent possible, right? And if I have sufficient reason to believe things are all right, I will make sure that it's credited." Yeah. So he says, "Okay, fine." By the way, he was not in his boiler suit. He was in his civilian clothes, ready to actually leave. So I asked him that, "So wouldn't you have actually handed over something?" I also asked him, "Do you know who's coming?" He says, "Yeah, we have been given a name." And I said, "Do you know if he sailed on this vessel before, or is he familiar with the equipment and machinery?" He said, "No, I don't know his status." I said, "Then in that case, this seems a bit odd to me that you're ready to sort of leave." He says, "No, no, but the second engineer should be able to show him. He's very competent. Let's talk to the second engineer, ex-Navy, right? Very nice guy. Yeah, but he had just joined a month ago.
Oh,
He was still using naval terms like, this is a mission critical equipment, and we are, our last mission was very good and all that. I said, "Okay, all that is fine. Can you tell me about performance of this auxiliary engine?" He says, "Whatever fourth engineer like tells me, I would like rely on that." Yeah. I said, "Okay, call fourth engineer." Fourth engineer comes in. He says, "Yeah, so whatever third engineer has told me, I would like rely on that." Where is third engineer? Third engineer is asleep right now. I said, "Okay, I will wait for him to like wake up to talk to the entire team here, right?" So you got two options while I wait. Either you open up some of the things which you have, yeah, and before that, chief, you might have to change back into your boiler suit and you might have to open these suitcases of yours again, yeah, or uh, let's talk to your entire team. And if I'm convinced that you are good to go and your engineers are familiar with what's going on in the engine room, I will be okay to credit the item. Half an hour, they say, "Sir, few of the things are open in the engine room. Would you like to come and have a look?"
okay. Now, how did
So
that happen?
I thought you were not ready to show me everything, number one. And number two, everything was okay. So I went down to the engine room to have a look at the machinery. And believe me, nothing was okay.
I think by
Nothing
then
was
you
okay.
would have anyway half expected it.
Right. And actually got around to detain the vessel, for your information. Although, I mean, it sounds like an anecdote at the beginning, but it wasn't funny at all when I gave them a condition of class for some of their machinery. And in fact, they had to call the workshop to rectify a few things. And instead of their usual, I think 1.5 or 2 days port stay, they actually stayed for 5 or 6 days. And then I came back to clear the vessel and to clear the COC, condition of class.
I want to come back to a point you had asked me to, which was the difference between survey and inspection and
Audit,
audit.
right? Okay, very good. So you would have heard of these three terms. An inspector is on board, auditor is on board, or a surveyor, right? The three activities. So what's the difference? So an audit is essentially looking at your records and having a look at your past. On the basis of your past performance, an auditor comes, sees whether your records are all right. Mostly it's 80%, 80, 90% records. Based on your record keeping, he or she gives you that it's okay for you to continue, right? That's the role of an audit and an auditor. An inspector, when he is checking the now, is checking the present. It's not important that the fire pump was making 6 bar or 5.5 bar pressure at the manifold yesterday. If it's not making today, you have failed the inspection. Okay. You might clear the audit by saying that you have ordered spares and the spares are coming, so and so time, but you have failed the inspection because the inspector wants to see 5.5, 6 bars pressure at the manifold and your pump has failed to deliver. So inspection, the scope of inspection is the present, how your equipment and how everything is functioning now. That's an inspection. And a survey is something for the future, which means that I'd like to see something opened up. As a surveyor, why do I see things opened up and why do I carry out a close-up examination of something? Is because I want to make sure that this equipment and this particular structure is okay for the next 5 years. Typically, a surveyor is a classification society surveyor and a certificate of class is issued for 5 years.
Okay, I kind of like how you split these three topics across time rather than across technically. It makes it far more visually easier to reflect upon.
Right. Yeah, yeah. But that's what it is. I must thank Lloyd's Register for giving me the opportunity because I was doing all three activities in that organization. I was a surveyor, I was an inspector, and I was an auditor.
ओके कौशिक सर आप लॉयड से द जर्नी टू बिकमिंग द प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ आईएमईआई इंडिया वो कैसे हुआ.
Okay. Yeah. So what happened was, in Lloyd's Register, the last 2 or 3 years, I was in management system certification. I moved into the domain of quality assurance. And then we had a division of Lloyd's Register called LRQA, which is Lloyd's Register Quality Assurance. And I moved into QA and I was doing auditing and I was tutoring management level classes for ISO 9000, 14,000, and then occupational health and safety standards, which is now, I think, ISO 45,000. So I was taking these classes and I felt that interacting with participants and the audience and giving them a perspective on how systems thinking is my forte. And I love doing that in a classroom style. So that's when I decided to sort of move on from Lloyd's Register because I was getting moved around, displaced. I was doing lots of audits and trainings. We were in Delhi at that time, and my good friend Shravan Rivari, who had set up Applied Research International with his father, uh, Captain Rivari, they were running that institute, and they had a sort of simulator division as well. And I thought it's a good idea to get into training full time. And that would, of course, keep me in one place and it would help me develop that skill set. And because during school and university days, my exposure to computers wasn't that much. Right. So I thought that's a good idea to get into programming, seeing what an visual source saves and open source programming, a bit of coding and stuff like that. So it gave me that particular insight. And of course, gave me an insight into how academics in India and the new sort of setup of private colleges are being run. And yeah, it was a very good journey and enjoyed my stint there and built up a skill set for simulators, which of course has come in handy as I moved along. From ARI, I got an offer to be the country manager of ABS quality evaluations. That's American Bureau
ABS.
of Shipping, ABS.
Yeah.
Yeah. They wanted to demerge their marine business from their industrial services and quality and training. So they wanted somebody to look after quality and training in India and the Indian subcontinent. ABS, of course, was very interesting for me because it showed me how to make an approach and how to make good sales and how to build a sales pipeline. I took that experience and I moved on to join Anglo Eastern in Mumbai as their risk and environmental compliance manager. And so our QHSE team was in Hong Kong, but I was based in Mumbai. So I used to shuttle between Mumbai and Hong Kong and look at how the environment, like those days, there was these issues in the US of MARPOL violations and a lot of engineers were actually put in jail. So I was actually hired by Anglo Eastern to make sure that the environmental control compliance is made robust so that Anglo Eastern, those days they had about 400 vessels, that these vessels are in safe working culture. On top of this, last 1 year with Anglo Eastern, I was the project manager for a company called Dockwise, which was moving heavy lift cargo. These offshore
Huh,
structures,
huh.
jackets, they need to be moved from the shipyard where they are built
If I'm
or
not wrong, I've
fabricated.
seen them in a couple of YouTube videos, which Nat Geo had built on moving one of some of the largest projects across
Project
the
cargoes.
ocean here.
Right, right. Dockwise was a heavy lift shipping company, which means they had specialized ships with very long flat decks, and you can modify the decks. You can shift a few things here and there, and then put the structure on board the vessel. And then, these are all semi-submersible vessels.
Correct.
Once the jacket needs to be put on top of the offshore on the field, these need to submerge and then come out, right?
Hmm, hmm.
So these are very specialized like vessels. I was the project manager for making the safety cases for these vessels, which means
Oh,
for any transit of project cargo, say from Korea to a location in Australia in an oil field, you have to make a safety case, which is basically a compilation of all the risks involved in the transportation of that cargo, of that asset. So this safety case needs to be approved by all the regulators. Like if the offshore asset is coming to India, for India, the regulator is ONGC and Director General of Hydrocarbons, DGH. So the safety case is made for them to approve. So I was in charge of making these safety cases for the movements of like dockwise vessel, and so I was to travel to their head office in Holland very often. And these vessels were run by Anglo Eastern, manned by Anglo Eastern people. So great learning. That was something which was very unique, and I enjoyed every bit of it. Yeah. Then came the offer from GL, Gamanisha Lloyd Academy. I always wanted to do and have a larger uh, level training setup where I can really look at every level and every strata of the maritime and offshore fraternity. And then when DNV and GL merged,
merged.
so then this came under the ambit of DNVGL Maritime Advisory, offering maritime advisory services to the industry in terms of doing training, in terms of doing consulting, in terms of making project reports and all that. So I went into maritime advisory to Singapore as their business development leader. From 14 to 19, I was doing fleet performance, uh, maritime advisory, hydrodynamic stability work, and things like that. And then went into performance management, as in Storm Geo. Storm Geo
Okay.
was a group company of DNV.
Now acquired by Alpha Level.
Yeah, so they hyped it off in 2019, and then I moved across to Storm Geo in South Asia. I also got a chance to then talk to a few technology providers about energy efficiency technologies, and that's when I thought that it's a good idea to get into a company called Neon, which was part of Maersk Tankers. Then I was with them looking after their energy efficiency technologies and how to make aging asset more energy efficient. That was the challenge. And that concept really appealed to me. And so I did that and then decided to move back last year from Singapore. Idea was to set up my own consultancy company, which I did, which is into maritime decarbonization and these energy efficiency technologies and training on these technologies and on fleet performance. So, well, I started with the intent of serving the industry with these domain expertise. But then last year around August, my friends and colleagues said that, hey, why don't you stand for uh, the elections of the Institute of Marine Engineers? Maybe the Institute looks at a fresh perspective and having a global outreach. I did put in my nomination, but I wasn't really expecting to win. I'll get to look at what I've missed in India for the last so many years, looking at how India has progressed. And I would be then be party to the growth story of what the Maritime India vision and the Amrit Kal vision has in mind. I'm here. And it's been a little over 6 months now that I've got this opportunity to serve the marine engineering fraternity. And I'm so glad that I'm in this position where they can be the unified voice of the marine engineering fraternity and the seafarers at large, because I'm also working very closely with associations like the Company of Master Mariners in India, CMMI, and the Institution of Naval Architects. I'd like to, of course, have a larger support so that we become a unified voice for the marine fraternity in India. There's a lot of scope with the advent of the inland waterways and with the disaster management plans for all the ports and our seaways to be made in the near future. So I think it augurs well, right?
Hope so too. It seems to be an exciting time, and even a few days back, I was talking to someone. Somehow, the entire maritime fraternity now is recognizing the importance of being in sync, and we are doing our bit in that regard. So, uh, I do hope that we see that materializing and not just an unfulfilled initiative.
Right. No, I hope so. Although our country has a lot of challenges, but of course we have to look beyond all that and our youth being channelized in the correct direction, then our maritime ecosystem has to be of a very high standard.
You use the word maritime nation, like PM's vision of a maritime nation. And when we speak of maritime nation, it's Singapore comes to our mind, at least in our part of the world. You created the branch of IMEI in Singapore, essentially from scratch, registering it, building it. In my uninformed opinion, I kind of feel it is less of a technical task and more of a political one. So, through that journey, I mean, through that process, what was the gaps that you kind of felt as an individual that institutions are speaking great things, but when it comes for the rubber to hit the tarmac, they are kind of backing off?
Right. So, Shankar, you have actually hit the nail at the right place here. Because, to be honest, setting up the Singapore chapter, I mean, it started off as a vision with the then president IMEI in India, Mr. Vijendra Jain, who incidentally is also my batchmate from Marine College. So he had in his objective to open international chapters. So in his endeavor, he reached out to me. He said that any way that we look at having marine engineering fraternity in those regions. So although in the past people tried to start this chapter, but that did not gather much steam. Then I thought, let me give it another shot. So I got together key people who would then eventually play a big role in setting it up. You pick a few good men and then make it happen. So I was very lucky to have
I
picked the
hope no
right team
reference to
there.
the movie.
Also that, right?
All right. Who was the first person you called up to convey when this happened, when it materialized? Do you recall?
First person when the
When
Singapore
this
chapter.
established?
I guess I think I called Mr. Jain uh, in India because he was the serving president at that time, and it was something which he also believed in would happen when I was there. So I think I called him and I gave him the good news that it's formed. So he was very happy. It was around 10 o'clock or something when we got the information.
You will probably take with your, I mean, as something you have done, right? With along with the
Yeah,
team.
so couldn't have done it alone for sure. Although a lot of people, we have this other organization in like Singapore, which is our alumni association, which is DMET Singapore. We have a lot of common members between that and the Institute of Marine Engineers, Singapore chapter. So they were of the opinion that why have two separate organizations doing the same work? We have to look at all the others, the Tolanis of the world, the other great institutes where the marine engineers are coming from, we have to have an alumni which encompasses everyone, you know. And then I got a lot of support from people from, say, Mazagon Docks, from Naval Dockyards. So people, marine engineers who are from there, from Vizag Port Trust, from Chennai Port Trust, people who are from there, they were not getting a unified voice or a forum to come out and share what they had in mind.
I'm glad I asked you that. Yeah, just the sound of it made me feel warm inside.
Right? Okay. No, no. So there you go. That includes you as well.
All right. Sir, I mean, somewhere on the internet, I read that you have described shipping as data rich but insight poor. Now, where does that data disappear to? That it does not feed into the insights.
What a great and insightful question, Shankar. Right? So my experience with data analytics and working in the fleet performance domain for the last 10 years or so, we realized that so much data was flowing in from the various systems, right? Auto log data from the ships are roughly about 5 to 10% of the, if you look at the 75,000 vessels, right, including the offshore assets that we have, about 5 to 10% only have auto log data which is coming, right? The rest of the data is still manual. Yeah, we still rely on Excel spreadsheets and all that to send like data. Although the landscape and scenario is changing a bit,
Changing.
but it's not that rapid. It's still very orthodox and old school. However, the question you ask is all this data which is coming in, how good is that data to be used for analysis, which can be fed back for improvement of performance of that vessel? A, B, of the fleet, and C, of the organization or the shipping company or the entity which it represents. So on all three counts, our data quality sucks, if I may use terminology from Gen Z. So it's something which needs a lot of improvement. This is a ship. I mean, even if you get a nice data point once every 4 hours or once every 6 hours, right? Even once every 12 hours, as long as that data point is good and it's correct, our performance can be good. Yeah. The technology providers who have made a killing ashore, they would like to put the same things on board the vessel. And at the same time, we must equip our crew to be competent enough to operate these equipment and use of technology. That is very important. People who are going to use it, it's a nightmare on board. And then it's a defunct piece of equipment lying in one corner of the engine room or one corner of the vessel. So that was my 2 cents on your query.
That was a loaded answer. Okay. Kaushik sir, you have talked about mentorship as a movement, not just a nice thing experienced people do. If you were to take a moment to envisage a very operational structure of this mentorship, how would that be?
Mentorship is very close to my heart. Given this day and age where it's not only technical mentorship, it's mental well being needs to be mentored. This is a very important aspect. And then, the moral compass and where it's headed, and how much of mentoring and how much of hand holding is required for people around us whom we feel we should be able to influence. I feel that on an operational front, mentorship, if we are talking of, say, a chief engineer who wants to grow in his profession as a chief engineer on board. He's a fresh chief engineer and he wants to be mentored, right? To put yourself in the other person's shoes, to be able to analyze, right, what he or she is going through and then suggest a viable way forward. And it's all different strokes for different folks here, mind you. There's not one single answer. Some part of it is generic, in my opinion, maybe 30 to 40%, but the balance, 60, 70%, is the customized stuff which you have to understand what the person has been through. And you have to relate because as a mentor, maybe you have been through that same scenario before. So suppose I'm mentoring a lady chief engineer, right? I might not be the best person to like mentor her because I've actually not been in that exact same shoes to give
Situations
her
in those
like guidance.
shoes.
I do understand human relationships, right? Maybe I can suggest, but maybe I'm not the best person. Maybe there could be a better person to guide and how to overcome them. And at IMEI, by the way, I'm really keen, and it's one of my objectives is to create a mentoring structure which will foster a good mentoring mentee relationship. And that's when I intend to bring out all these people who have retired and they're now maybe playing bridge or listening to karaoke. I want to bring these earlier
People who
generation
have a
marine
wealth to
engineers.
offer.
Correct. I want to bring them into a healthy mentor mentee relationship so that they can, guide the youngsters in the correct direction.
Okay. Yeah. If you could have dinner with three people from your maritime career, living or dead, famous or forgotten, who would they be and why?
Okay. Wow. That's again a very interesting question and which will require. Hey, yeah, I would call a lot of people to a party like this. I would like to call a lot, and at the same time, I would not like to invite a lot as well. Let me tell you. I have a long list,
Still,
Shankar.
if a few names comes to your mind, I mean, let
Okay,
me remove the clause of three.
okay. No, so let me try and put three. Three is a good number. Let me see. One person who was very instrumental in shaping my initial years out at sea uh, would be my second engineer. I was the fifth engineer, and my second chief engineer was Mr. Binney. Why I say was he unfortunately passed away in an accident, and nobody knows how he died. I think his body was not recovered or something. He fell between. He was on board supervising some operation. He was a superintendent at that time when he passed away, and he was visiting one of the vessels. And I think he fell between the mothership and the daughtership, and we lost him.
Okay.
Mr. Binney would be one person whom I would like to invite for dinner here because a great mentor. Learning from him was the key, and he used to teach not by just telling the answer. He used to teach us by telling us, find it out the correct way. And if we found out something which was only half, right, he used to tell us that this half was correct. Now find out the other half. When you're going wrong, at the correct time, if you do a course correction, then you tend to learn the correct thing. So when you mentioned operationally when you're mentoring someone, that's what I mean. When I'm in the engine workshop, And if I'm, say, welding something, if I'm learning welding and somebody can see me doing it not correctly, right? You can stop me there and then and either show me the correct thing for the balance of the weld or do an incorrect weld of the entire seam and then pick up another job and then show it to me. Mr. Binney was one such person who would stop me in the middle of that weld. He would do it himself and show me some part of it and ask me to complete the rest. Do you see the difference? So that's
You learn much better and faster.
you learn much better. Correct. In those days, there was no internet, there was no chat GPT. I can just Google and find out how. Hey Siri, how do you do cold layup or boiler? You have an answer, right? Very grateful to Mr. Binney. So that's like number one. And now, since I went thinking that far back, from my university, there was our professor, Mr. Agnihotri, Mr. DC Agnihotri, who used to teach us drawing and design,
Engineering drawing.
engineering, drawing, and design. Yeah. His drawing, of course, was immaculate. We could not match that at all, right? But any doubt which we had, right, if we go to him, he used to say, son, come over to my house in the evening and I will
Oh,
explain this. And the number of times I have been to his house to make myself better. So Mr. Agnihotri would be, the second person. And some people who would listen to this interview would also understand why I want to call Mr. Agnihotri. And let me see, a third person would be somebody whom I met about 15 years ago, and he is the epitome of resilience in the Merchant Navy. He is a governing council member from Delhi, Mr. Chirag Bari. He runs ISWAN in this region. He's the head of ISWAN. I would like to invite him because he, after being in Somalia with the pirates in captivity for 15, 16 months, enduring torture, and then coming back, probably I would have left sea that very instant and not to go back ever again. He lost a lot of personal things to build up and come back to help people who are enduring similar situational issues is, in my opinion, a great living proof of a very high moral standing. To have such a person on a dinner table, I would be very fortunate.
wow. Okay. I remember
Yeah.
interacting with him. A soft spoken gentleman has that presence about him.
Yeah, he speaks on behalf of seafarers who are going through troubled times, and he and his organization takes up their issues. Yeah. In fact, I always remember him. Good that you asked. Let me pull up this pen.
Yeah, now it shows ISWAN.
Yeah. And look at this. In
Nice.
this pen, it's an inbuilt QR code and it's got email
Wow.
addresses and all that. Look at this concept.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So
Right.
I kind of like how you kind of made that transition so easily. With that, I'll close. It was laden with pragmatic advices, snippets. You are a vivid storyteller, so a lot of times I could just visualize you going there, being in that engine room, nudging the surveyor not to go inside the boiler. Your experience at Dockwise, you took me through to those boardrooms, and later on also the chapter around Singapore and even the IMEI presidency. Thank you, big thanks.
You're most welcome, Shankar, and I'm so glad that you took me through that journey, and I also relived those memories, right? And it's pure nostalgia, and I'm so thankful to you and your entity for having me and allowing me to share my journey so far. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you,
Jai
sir.
Hind.
Thank you. Jai Hind.